Ukrainian hospital bombing increases heat on U.S. and allies to do more to stop Russia. Pressure is growing on the Biden administration and its European allies to justify whether they are doing enough to stop the atrocities that are being inflicted on the Ukrainian people, as horrific new images emerged Wednesday from the alleged Russian bombing of a maternity and children's hospital in Mariupol. So, I always say, listen, there's a lot of propaganda going on both sides. So I have no way to verify whether Russia bombed these hospitals. It's definitely likely they did. But without being on the ground, and even people I've spoken to are on the ground, it's hard to know, what's misinformation, what's propaganda, what's this. But maternity wards have been bombed. Hospitals have been bombed. Innocent civilians are being killed. And obviously this is due to, there's a lot of reasons that I've gotten into discussing the history of NATO, the United States breaking promises to Russia. So we can point that out, that Russia does have legitimate grievances, but that does not condone a full-scale war and invasion killing innocents. But before I get your thoughts on it, I also want to show Biden today was very much quacking and bragging about dismantling Russia's stock market and therefore economy.
We're increasing coordination among the G7 countries and to target, capture the ill-begotten gains, the yachts. You see some of these yachts 450 feet long. No, I'm serious. Hundreds of millions of dollars in value. They're luxury apartments. The totality of our economic sanctions and export controls are crushing the Russian economy. The ruble has lost, I know many of you know this in detail, lost more than half its value. You know what the value of a ruble is versus a dollar? You need 200 rubles to equal $1 today. 200. Moscow Stock Exchange is closed for a simple reason. I get asked, well, why is it closed? Because for the last 2 weeks, because the moment it opens, it will be disbanded. You hear me? It will blow up. Credit rating agencies have downgraded Russia's government to junk status. Junk status. The list of private business and international corporations leaving Russia is growing day by day by day.
So that's Biden. Doesn't sound so hot, I'll just say. Sounds a little sleepy. But, they're bragging about the destruction of the Russian economy. Obviously, oligarchs, this and that. But David Sirota, others have done some reporting how even our sanctions on oligarchs isn't really going to affect them that much. It's actually the people of Russia that are going to suffer. And lastly, on top of the Russian economy that Biden is boasting about there that we're harming, Biden was asked about basically what the Biden administration has been pushing out as a trial balloon, that Russia is going to, that there's risks of Russia unleashing chemical weapons, which honestly, just the United States mentioned this and Jen Psaki tweeting this out. I don't know. It kind of seems like an escalation to even mention this, but let's play what Biden had to say.
The White House has said that Russia may use chemical weapons or create a false flag operation to use them. What evidence have you seen showing that? And would the U.S. have a military response if Putin does launch a chemical weapons attack?
I'm not going to speak about the intelligence, but Russia would pay a severe price if they use chemicals.
So he's not going to speak about the intelligence, but Russia would do an extreme price. And he, by the way, saying that today comes after, if we have that tweet, Colin, from Jen Psaki, the press secretary, where she was doing a long Twitter thread, almost like she's just some Twitter person, saying that now that Russia has made these false claims and China has seemingly endorsed this propaganda, she's referencing that they are saying the U.S. has a bioweapons facility in Ukraine. We should all be on the lookout for Russia to possibly use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine, or to create a false flag operation using them. It's a clear pattern. So it seems like the evidence for this, Peter and Jen, started with the press secretary's Twitter at a pattern, and then has moved to Biden answering a question. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about the evidence, but they would pay. Now, to be clear, I'm not discounting that Russia could do that, but it seems pretty reckless for the United States to even be talking about this, because it's just kind of like floating a trial balloon, and further escalation when they're not presenting any evidence?
Well, as far as I can see, this is what I would deem as classified type information. And the reason why they're releasing it to the public is because they're trying to gin up support for a war. There's no question that if the main belligerents, as I like to say, Raytheon, Honeywell, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, if their stock is going up, then they want this to continue to fester, and they want people to be suggesting, yeah, maybe a no-fly zone in Ukraine would be a good idea. Yeah, maybe if we just put a few troops on the ground, that might not be such a bad idea. And the more the agitation continues, the more, you know what this is? I hate to say it, guys. We were very young at the time. Jen was even young at the time. There was this thing called the incubator babies leading up to the Iraq War in 1991. They wanted you to believe that the Iraqi military was going into these hospitals, throwing the babies on the floor.
I don't feel like we get accurate enough information to know the nuance. That's the thing. I don't think we know. And I think we, as in NATO, has been overstepping since World War II. And it's like, we're like the little kid that keeps poking and poking and poking, and nobody knows we're doing it. No media coverage on that. Nobody knows where our little warships are set up, and all over in Russia's grill, by the way. And then they do something and we're like, oh, did you see that? Did you see what they did? And so I just don't know what our responsibility is in basically inspiring that. We have a role in this. So to act like we don't, I think that's the problem. That's my concern.
I know nuance is not allowed on the internet. And I'm going to play this comment because I think it's a fair question. Jordan, do you condemn Russia because they are wrong or because you were compelled by YouTube policies? So I have a nuanced position, which, wasn't popular on Twitter, because in this world online, you have to be absolutist. You have to be all black or all white. It's like a tribal thing. You're either pro-Russia, pro-Ukraine, or you're somehow in the middle. I condemn what Russia is doing because I'm anti-war and I'm anti-imperialist, regardless of whether the country invading does have legitimate grievances. I think it cannot be, you're not going to hear it on CNN, but I think we'd all agree. Listen, there were promises made to the Soviet Union at the fall of the Soviet Union. There was promises made by NATO. NATO basically is the United States, which a bunch of other countries. And the promise was we will not move eastward past reunified Germany. And that lasted for about 5 minutes. So obviously, Putin does have legitimate grievances as far as the threat of NATO, but that doesn't condone invading another country and killing innocent people. It's like the old 2 wrongs don't make a right. So then people ask, well, what would you want Russia to do? I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass. I don't know what the answer is, but the answer is not war. And if you're anti-war, you should be against Putin invading Ukraine. God knows how many people have died already and how many more people are going to die. Of course, there has been civil war in Ukraine where ethnic Russians have died also. But I'm against war, period. So that's why no, it's not because YouTube's telling me to. I condemn what Putin is doing. Your thoughts on what I said?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm anti-imperialist across the board. My only, when I talk about it in terms of what information we can trust, and I know we have whatever our motives are as a country in that mix, but yeah, I'm anti-war. I'm all I think about are mothers in Ukraine and Russia that are just trying to get their children to adulthood in one piece. And that's what I think about with all of these things. And so to me, I don't care whether my oligarchs speak Russian, Chinese, or English. I really don't. I have way more in common with those people. And the thing is, we can't control we can't control what our own imperialist government does. How many countries are we drone bombing? So I just feel like for us to be trying to condemn Russia, which again, don't like what they're doing, but it's like, we really have a lot of our own stuff going on that is way worthy of discussion, more so.
And not only that,
that's what I think.
And we're also living in a time right now. This is sort of like, as I've been pointing out a lot, and you and I have talked about, this is sort of the next evolution of this movement that started during the Bernie Trump phenomenon, where a lot of people had their political awakening, and now all of a sudden they're seeing things that they wouldn't normally see because they've become hip to the game. Like Jonathan Toymaker says, meanwhile, in Yemen and Palestine, the bombing has gone to a 20. Because everyone is focusing on what's going on in the Ukraine and Russia. Not that that isn't important, it is. But if all the attention is going there, then the nonstop bombing by the Saudis and the nonstop bombing by the Israelis are just going to get completely ignored, because they suck all the air out of the room. And so the imperialism is at an unbelievable pitch at this point. And so having a more diverse, but also a more robust anti-war voice and movement right now is so essential, because they're doing everything in their capacity within the corporate infrastructure to silence anybody who isn't as I mean, you thought people were anti-Putin during, when Trump was president. I mean, now forget it. You're not even allowed, like you said, nuance, no. not allowed.
Well, I also want to point out, I mean, there's just basic truths beyond just this crisis and this war. At the end of the day, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Post, the Washington Post, their ratings, their traffic fell off a cliff after Trump. Their ratings and their traffic are way up. So let's not pretend, I believe, it seemed like CNN, MSNBC, all these platforms were very much covering for weeks, Putin about to invade. And I raised my hand. I was wrong. I didn't think he would. You just have to say I was wrong. I didn't expect that. But they were almost like wagging the door for it to happen while simultaneously saying, we are aghast. This cannot happen. And it's almost like the same strategy. Oh, let's start talking about chemical weapons because that's going to gin up fear, ratings, and more. So they're the ones, and of course, Putin made the decision to invade. I'm not blaming cable news, but they certainly kind of were covering it with a wink and a nod, like, don't invade, but if you do. Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream, Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.